Right. All right, so we're live. That it's recording. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and review real quick cardiovascular because that's where you're gonna have your test. And so we said that the cardiovascular system is made up of the heart and all the blood vessels. Okay. It also includes blood cells. Okay. We also know that the heart is the one that helps us oxygenate. We take blood from the heart to the lungs to oxygenate it, and it's also another way for us to get nutrients to the body. Okay, it also is going to transport the carbon dioxide back to the lungs to remove it and put back oxygen, and it also helps us with metabolic materials. And it pulls them away from the body, and then we take them out. One of the areas where we'll be taking some of that stuff is your kidneys, okay? So any questions on how your circulatory system starts? All right. The other way.
Is that right?
No, one more. Go down. One more. Down. There you go.
Oh, go down.
All right, so we know that our heart is a muscle. It's a hollow, and it's the pump that gives us life. It weighs about a pound, we said, okay? Somebody who has cardiovascular disease or has high blood pressure will have a heart that will be a lot heavier. It's sort of like when you are doing weights, okay? What are you doing when you're lifting weights? Who can tell me? What are we doing when we lift weights to our muscles?
Making our muscles bigger.
We're making our muscles larger, okay? In this case, making our muscles larger is healthy for us because we're burning fat, we're burning calories, and we're creating muscle tissue. In the heart is the other way around, okay? In our heart, when our heart is working faster, it enlarges, but that doesn't mean it's healthier, okay? So it works backwards. Can you go back one, please, Mr. Turnbull? There you go. Thank you. Okay, so we know that our heart is made up of 3 layers: the endocardium, myocardium, and pericardium. We said the endocardium is what?
The muscle within.
The muscle inside. The myocardium? The muscle in the middle. And that is actually the muscle that we actually are concerned with. Because when we have a myocardial infarction, meaning a heart attack, that is the muscle that is dying, okay? And then your pericardium is what?
The muscle on the outside. Yeah.
The layer outside. It's a really thin layer that covers the heart, okay? And when we hear pericarditis, that means that what?
The outside of the heart is inflamed.
The pericardium has become enlarged or it's inflamed, and so now it's holding fluid, okay? That's when you hear we have fluid in the heart. That's what they're talking about. All right, next slide, please. All right, so the heart has a septum, which is the big, thick muscle that separates the left and the right chambers. You have 4 heart chambers. The upper are your atrium, the bottom are your ventricles. And then you have the valves. You have the tricuspid valve, pulmonary, the mitral, and the aortic, okay? Your tricuspid valve is found on the right side of your heart, and that is the one that opens and closes when blood is traveling from the right atrium to the right ventricle. And then you have your pulmonary valve that pushes the blood from the right ventricle onto the pulmonary artery to the lungs. What did we say that the pulmonary artery was the only artery that carries what? The oxygenated blood. So remember, it is the only artery in your body that will carry the oxygenated blood. All the arteries carry oxygenated blood. Then you have your mitral valve. Your mitral valve is also known as what?
Bicuspid.
The bicuspid valve. Very good. That one is found between your left atrium and your left ventricle. Okay? That's the one that's going to open and bring in blood back from your lungs. And that blood is coming back through your pulmonary veins that are carrying what type of blood? It's coming back from the lungs, bringing back oxygenated. Very good. It is the only vein, the pulmonary veins are the only veins that bring back oxygenated blood back to the heart. Okay? And then we have our aortic valve, which is going to open when the left ventricle is pushing the blood out from the heart to go to the rest of the body. All right? Questions so far? Very good. Next slide, please. Okay. We have a cardiac cycle is 1 heartbeat. Okay? So every time you hear lump, 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 that is 1 cardiac cycle. Okay? We have the conductive pathway. So we have your AV node and you have your SA node. Your SA node is your pacemaker for your heart. That is your natural pacemaker. When your SA node does not work properly, we actually go in there and we implant on inside your chest a artificial pacemaker. This is going to trigger every time there is a fluctuation and your heart is ready to stop, then the pacemaker we put in automatically triggers so that there's current again. Okay? You have arrhythmias. They're defibrillate, and we use defibrillators to bring it back into pace. And of course, your pacemaker. Again, if your SA node, which is your natural pacemaker, if that's not working properly, then we implant one. All right, questions so far? Okay. Your blood is carried through your body via the vessels. We have arteries and we have veins. The arteries become arterioles, which are smaller, and then from the arterioles they become capillaries. Then the capillaries attach to your venules, and your venules attach to your veins. Okay? So if you were looking at a heart with all, or the circulatory system with all there, you will see that you have little tiny capillaries that are going to connect your arterioles and your venules. There's exchange there of gases, and then it goes back to the veins and to the arteries, and the system continues. Okay? Your arteries, again, are going to carry blood away from the heart, and the capillaries are the ones that connect arterioles and venules, and your vein carries blood back to the heart. The two major veins that carry blood back to the heart are your superior and inferior vena cava. Okay? Your arteries that are your main artery is your aorta. Okay? And your aorta has an ascending and descending aorta. The ascending aorta is the one that's going to send blood up into the upper part of your body, and it's divided. It has an arch, and then it's divided into different arteries from there, and it'll take blood into the brain, okay, via your carotids. And then you have the descending aorta that goes straight down the middle of your body, and then right about your hips, it bifurcates, it divides, okay? It's going to divide into your femoral arteries that go down your legs, and your renal arteries that go to your kidneys, okay? So it bifurcates in those areas. Questions? Okay, next slide, please.
Did I do the next? I think when you're going off there, it's like it's... Okay.
Yeah, it stops. It follows me. Okay, so the average blood that we have is about 4 to 6 quarts, okay, of blood. And this is what is going to help us transport different substances, minerals, vitamins, oxygen, nutrients, okay? So our blood is very essential to us because it has all of this stuff that will help us maintain our metabolic system. It is composed of 2 major things. Your plasma, which is the liquid portion, and then your blood cells. The liquid portion of your blood is composed of, it has what we call it has coagulation factors. Okay, these are the ones that are going to help you, your blood coagulate or form clots when you get injured. Okay, and then you have your blood cells. The blood cells that you have are your RBCs, or erythrocytes, your leukocytes or white blood cells, and your thrombocytes, which are also known as platelets. Okay? Within your leukocytes, we have 5 different types of white cells. Okay? 5 different types of white cells. The first 3, we call them granulated. Okay? Because in their plasma, inside the cells, they have little granules. Okay? The first ones are your neutrophils. Your second ones are your basophils. Your third ones are your eosinophils. Okay? The ones that are most abundant in your blood, as far as the white cells, are your neutrophils. Your neutrophils are going to help you fight bacterial infections. Okay? And then you'll have your eos and your basos. Those are normally in very small percentages found. If we find them, it's either because you're having an allergic reaction or you have a parasitic infection. And so we'll see either your eos or your basos depending. Then the other 2 that we call agranulocytes, meaning they don't have any granules, are your lymphocytes and your monocytes. Okay? Your lymphocytes are usually going to be elevated when you have a viral infection going on. Okay? And then your monocytes are bigger. They're the biggest of the white cells, and they're the ones that are going to, they're phagocytic in nature, and they can be found either in bacterial or viral infections. Okay? Questions? And then your thrombocytes, where they're the ones that are going to help you create blood clots. Even though your platelets are good for you, because if you cut yourself, they're the first line of defense to stop the bleed, they can also be dangerous when they start clumping in your arteries, because then they become a thrombus, and that can move in the bloodstream and go to your brain, or go to your lungs, or go to your heart, and so it can create either a heart attack, a pulmonary embolism, an aneurysm, and so you can die. Okay? So even though they're good for you, they're also a little bit bad when those things happen. Okay? Questions? No? Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so you guys had an assignment. For those of you that didn't get your assignment, I will give you till Friday to turn it in, but I need them because this Friday again is going to be progress report. So it's the 3 weeks of the 4-6 weeks, okay? And so you guys were supposed to not define, but tell me what the diseases, each disease was. You were supposed to give me signs, symptoms, etiology, basically, and then to give me a disease that fell under one of those, okay? For instance, if you had an anemia, if you didn't, that's okay, don't panic, okay? If you had an anemia, you could have put B12 deficiency, iron deficiency anemia, which is very common in young ladies. Aneurysms, that one, you explain the etiology of it, how it would happen, and what are the risks and what you see. Then you had arteriosclerosis and atherosclerosis. With those, I did ask you to do was to tell me what were the type of treatments that were from least invasive to most invasive, okay? And give me an example of one of them. Then you had congestive heart failures, also known as CHF, and embolus, and in your book you had others, okay? So you needed to go over those and give me some examples, and so if you haven't done that, I'll give you till Friday to do that, okay? there as well. Yes, you can. I'll give you time in class.
And give you a example of each one, like the B12 deficiency, and go back and do it.
I will give you time to do that today, okay? And then I'll take them before the end of the period, because I'm gonna take everything that's there, and then the classes that didn't get to do it will have an extra, they'll have extra time to finish it up and turn it in before, or by Friday, okay? Questions so far? No? Okay, so we're done with the cardiovascular system. Do you have any questions, guys? Anything you wanna ask? This is your opportunity to ask me. Yes, ma'am.
So when someone has an allergic reaction, do the cells that are present when the allergic reaction occurred die off?
Once the allergic reaction has been contained, in the sense that we've given you the medication to bring down, which is your antihistamine, okay, then those cells will eventually start ceasing, and they will go back to into normal values. Not some of them non-existent. Yeah. Usually, it's really rare that you'll see an eosinophil, even a basophil. Your basophils are like 0.1% of all the white cells. So they're extremely rare. So when one of us medical technicians or technologists find one, it's like, oh look, a basophil. You get all excited because they're really rare. How do we tell them apart? Well, it's how they stain. Okay? The basophils stain have really, the granules are really large and they're purple. Okay? And so that's how you know it's a basophil. Then the eosinophils have smaller granules, but they have a lot of them in their cytoplasm, and they have an orangey red color to them. So they have this really nice color, almost like your shirt, that color. Okay, and your neutrophils, also known as segmented segs, they have granules that are very small, and what you see more in there is the actual the nucleus. The nucleus of your neutrophils, guys, what's that we call them segmented, is not a normal round or a spheric neutrophil. Nucleus. Bless you. It's tagged off, and you'll have 7 or 8 little segments to it, and they're all attached. Okay, so it's not a regular nucleus like you have in your normal cells. Okay, your lymphocytes, on the other hand, will have more nucleus than cytoplasm, and the nucleus is really dark. It's purple. The cytoplasm, you'll almost see very little of it, and it has a sky blue color to it. And your monocytes are larger. They're the largest of the whites, and your monocytes are going to have a non-spherical, it's convoluted nucleus, but they have more cytoplasm. So the cytoplasm to nucleus ratio is larger. Okay? Questions? Do y'all know where your thrombocytes come from?
Telomere.
Well, yeah, but what's the cell called? The mother cell. It's called a megakaryocyte. The megakaryocyte is a large cell. It starts off in your bone marrow as a megakaryocyte. Let me write it on the board. Mega. Okay. That's what we call the mother cell. Okay. It's a large cell that starts off in your bone marrow, and then it gets sent into the bloodstream. Once it's sent to the bloodstream, it breaks off into tiny little pieces, and those are your platelets. Your platelets are tiny little pieces that come from that megakaryocyte. Okay? Any other questions? No? Okay. So there's just a couple of things that I want to go over with you that I didn't go over. Systole and diastole. Systole and diastole are part of your blood pressure. Okay. When we say systole and diastole, we're talking about the pumping of the heart and what you hear and where the stage where the heart is when it comes to blood pressure. So I don't know if that's gonna see me over here, but we'll see. So systole is the heartbeat that when the heart is pumping the blood out. Okay. And in systole, you're gonna have, this is where you know how your blood pressure, your BP is 120 over 80, okay? The large number is your systole. So your large number of your BP is your systole. Okay? And that is when the heart is pumping all the blood's in the left ventricle, and it's getting ready to push the blood out. That's why that number is bigger, okay? Because that's how much pressure is being exerted to push that blood out to all of the body. Your systole is when your heart is at rest. I think that's the way Mr. Bar is going. When heart and what we mean by at rest, it means that the heart, the ventricles are sitting there, okay, waiting for the blood to come to them. That's when the atria are bringing in the blood, and then it's going through the tricuspid and the bicuspid valve and filling up the ventricles. That is your smaller number. Okay? That is your smallest number. The ranges are from 60 to 90, and it's millimeters of mercury. Okay? And over here is 100 to 140. Yeah. Okay. So systole is when your heart is pumping, when your heart is working. Diastole is when your heart is at rest and is receiving the blood from the atria into the ventricles. Okay? Does that make sense? All right. We measure it in mercury, millimeters of mercury, and the reason we measure in millimeters of mercury is because we use our sphygmomanometers, were manual, and when we would press on the pump to raise it, it was mercury in the lines until they found out that mercury was bad for us, and so they started taking them out of the market. Your thermometers were like that too. Okay, your glass thermometers had mercury in them, and that's when they found out that it was bad for humans. They started recalling all of those sphygmomanometers, and they started replacing them with dialed sphygmomanometers, okay, or electronic. Have you guys done blood pressures? Yes? You have? But in class?
Not in this class.
We did it in previous lessons.
Okay, but not in principles of health science. So okay, so we'll do then when we do vitals. That's, I guess what we're gonna do is after this cardiac then we'll jump into vital signs, because I need you guys to know that. And so we'll jump into vital signs, okay? And that'll be our next chapter, vital signs. We'll learn a bunch of that stuff. Any questions with that? Because I know it'll be in your test. They'll ask about systole and diastole and which one's the upper and which is. So remember, the big number is your systolic, your little number is your diastolic, and your diastolic is when your heart is at rest. And when we say that because the ventricles are not pumping anything out. Okay. Question.